You're listening to WSTU Stewart.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
It is 6:08 on the east coast of Florida, and you're on Small Biz Florida with Mr. Tom Kindred.
Thank you, sir, and welcome to another segment and installment of Small Biz Florida, the podcast and broadcast that's all things business across the Treasure Coast and the entire state of Florida. Small Biz Florida is brought to you by the Florida Small Business Development Center Network and is produced by the Florida SBDC right here at Indian River State College. Small Biz Florida is designed and produced to highlight and promote business assistance resources, celebrate entrepreneurial success, present best practices, and most importantly, provide timely business information for Florida's small business community. I am Tom Kindred, and I serve as your host and regional director for the Florida Small Business Development Center at Indian River State College. So, Greg, how are you this evening?
Doing well.
All right. I understand you're back in business tomorrow with high school football.
That we are. Martin County undefeated. They play a big team from Palm Beach. May not stay undefeated, but we'll find out. Out tomorrow.
That will probably be a good game.
Yeah, actually it will. Yeah, we're excited.
All right. And you're so you make the rounds with high school football. You every Friday night you're someplace.
Yeah, and actually Adam McDonald, St. Lucie Mets announcer, will be taking over next week with Dan Como. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's happening with Pioneer sports? Basketball and women's volleyball. And
Pioneer volleyball going real well.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing well. The ladies are having a good season so far.
Okay. Good. And again, gym is open. People can come.
Yes.
We're kind of wide open on the campus.
No protocols whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yep.
All right. Listen, got a very interesting guest tonight. Can't wait for this conversation. I've had the opportunity, and of course, really, if you've been around St. Lucie County for any time at all, aquaculture has been part of really, the manufacturing and been a big part of the industry segment here in St. Lucie County for years, with with Harbor Branch being around, and but it's kind of one of those industries that's kind of backstage. You don't always see it up front, but there is a lot going on. And tonight I've got with me Joe Cardenas.
Yes, sir.
Yep, Joe with AQUACO Farms. Joe, welcome to Small Biz Florida.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, listen, again, like I say, for years, there's always been, aquaculture as part of our region's, business sector. And again, a lot going on. Through the years, you hear about businesses, the shrimp farming business, the clam. I think they've tried clams, and so there's been an awful lot going on. But you kind of hear about it and then it fades away. But you're planting the flag in the region with AQUACO.
Yeah, I will just tell you, looking back now, ignorance is bliss, right? Coming from a whole different industry into aquaculture, I think you need all the enthusiasm and stubbornness I had, but just that much ignorance to know what everything would go wrong around the world. And so it's saying that, I don't know if anyone would get started. It just takes guys like me to have enough of the gumshoe to kind of fight through that and learn things along the way a little bit. Some of those are great lessons, some of them are hard lessons, but nonetheless, it takes a little bit of fortitude.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about AQUACO. Let's start with a little bit of background on yourself, which is interesting because you haven't been in this industry too long. So start off with a little background. How did you get to AQUACO?
Sure. That started 5 years ago, but before that, my career was in financial lending and banking, commercial lending. Started in my early 20s as a branch manager and moving my way up, and learned about credit and everything you do with lending. And the godsend there is that you become an expert of very little, but a very rounded person around business in general, right? And so you name it, we've lent to different industries, but it was just fortunate part that I did well early in my career until the point where I got to my mid-30s and said, is this it? Is this the next 20, 25 years? And I started to look around the room and say, gosh, I want to have a little bit more fun than that.
Well, you used to fish for clients.
That's right. There was a little bit of that, without question. But it was a, here it is again in hindsight, but just a great background to have. But you had to be super humble going into an industry like this of what you don't know, which is 90% of it, or 95% of it.
Right. Talk to us a little about AQUACO.
Sure.
What do you do, and kind of history and how all this started? Incredible story.
Yeah, this was, people think we launched at a certain point, but it took me about a year just to make sure I was sane enough to burn my bridges, right, and burn all the ships in harbor and start on this journey. So that was a lot of sleepless nights with Excel sheets on my laptop and just making sure this performa had merit, right? And so that's where it began. We incubated down at Florida Atlantic University in their tech runway program, which was a great 9 months. Gave me a good launching pad, a little bit of cash, but also a little bit of time to go out there and find a site, get all the permits. Aquaculture is one of those where you hurry up and wait, right? We find a great site here in Fort Pierce, Florida. Took about 9 months of site selection to get it. About another, 8-9 months of permit waiting and crossing your fingers.
Wow.
And meeting with county and folks in the state. Florida Department of Aquaculture and Ag, and then you get ready, right? Then it's now we got to build, now the exciting part. So all that was fantastic. About 2.5 years ago, we finally put our last, piece of pipe together in the building and said, we're ready. And my guys disappointed me and said, but Joe, we don't load all these tanks. We start with one, and then the next month we had another. And so it's this hurry up and wait attitude in aquaculture to not shock your system, so to speak. So long story short, about the last 18 months, we've had fish in the building and a consistent harvest every week for the last 12 months.
Wow. And take me a little bit into this whole aquaculture industry. Why the starts and the stops? What kind of has caused that over the last couple of decades?
It's I couldn't answer that 3 or 4 years ago, but I can today. And the danger of our industry, it's heavily capital intensive, right? These are huge equipments, pumps. I mean, we built this 50-ton system in close to $4 million. You can imagine. You get it on the back end, but nonetheless, it's a lot of upfront capital. So investors want to see that return right away. And if anyone's been involved in agriculture, right away, and returns don't necessarily happen simultaneously, right? No. And so you got to have that patience level of, we need capital. We're going to pay it back in 4 or 5 years, but not in 18 months. And so that's the balance that we have. And it's also an industry you can't start in your garage, right? It's almost impossible to prove it out at scale in a few tanks that you can do. So we found the middle ground, right? We did this pilot that was 20,000 square feet, 50 tons, enough to where we were not going to learn any more commercially about the fish, but we knew we had to grow to be profitable and to really gain venture. So it was a risk on early investors to say, we'll give you that time. We'll give you 2 or 3 years of producing it. Make sure your formula is the right formula, your blueprint's the right blueprint. But at the end of the day, we knew we have to scale this business. So I think that's the dead bodies in front of us either went too quick out of ire of getting a return, or they just hovered too small and were never able to kind of take the next step.
What, again, having been involved, the SBDC had the opportunity over the years to work with some folks that were working in the aquaculture space. What are the different versions out there? There are aquaculture companies that actually grow them in pens and cages actually in the ocean, and your model is a little different. Talk about the different models of aquaculture.
Sure, because there is no right or wrong model. The worst thing I hear sometimes is kind of inner fighting in the industry of what's the better way. There isn't one. It really, you let the species tell you what the best way to raise it is, right? You start fighting with Mother Nature too much, and you're really going to get yourself in trouble. So to me, there's the open pen culture that you point to, not usually regulated in the U.S., so that's why you don't see a lot of Florida-based or any state-based pen culture out there. Then you have land-based, like what we do. It's probably the newest kid on the block, if you will, because the equipment and the design and systems and the engineering is there now to do it. You have this shellfish, which is a great return to the environment because you're doing nothing but kind of helping the waterways, and that's been around a very long time, but it's typically been hate to say it, a mom and pop industry, but they're single operators that are now starting to see some progress and some mergers and acquisitions in that space. And there's some good stories there just to be able to do more, out of scale. And I'm sure I'm missing, a few along the way, but those are the top 2 or 3 that we have.
And has the science progressed? I'm sure it has over the last couple of decades since things got started with, Harbor Branch. Now time flies, but I mean, many years ago, has science progressed? I mean, technology progressed through all those years. I'm sure it has.
It's helped. You know what? It was a synergy, though. Like we are basically a water treatment plant on land that happens to raise fish around it, right? That's the simplest way to explain what we do. And all that equipment has been around for decades in terms of, municipal water treatment facilities. So what it took in these years is someone smarter than me to say, okay, if we take this drum from over here, filter, and we take this tank from over here and we combine it with this pump, all of a sudden now you're treating water for fish versus treating it for, municipalities. And so is the engineering and the science of putting that together. Plus, hate to say it, but this has been an international sport for a long time, right? So in the U.S., we're relatively new to this, and so we're also learning from afar. Our stubborn American ways, we're humbled a little bit to say, why have the folks in Europe been doing this longer than us? Why are the folks in Middle East doing this longer than us in Asia? And here we are.
What about from the consumer side of aquaculture? Are the consumers getting a better product, a healthier product? From the consumer side, what is aquaculture and a company like AQUACO bringing to the marketplace?
It's a great question. Probably the best reason that customers to get excited about aquaculture in the U.S. is now used to be a farming versus wild, conversation. It still is, and I still having those discussions. But really now it's a matter of, am I getting my product domestically? Has it swam in the United States, or am I getting it shipped over, in a boat over from another country? And is it frozen? Is it fresh? And I told people, for every headache I suffered in gray hair those first 18 months of permitting and regulations is all in the consumer favor. This is making sure that we're treating the environment right with our water and ingress and egress. It's making sure we don't use hormones or antibiotics in the feed or in our fish. And so all those things, if I'm a consumer and I'm walking into the supermarket or to the retail, or even at the restaurant, I want to know, is it from the U.S., hopefully Florida based, right? But is it based here, or are you bringing those animals in? And that to me is the biggest difference in aquaculture.
And is that something a consumer should start asking? Is that something I could ask when I go to Publix or go to a restaurant? Could I say, hey, where's the fish coming from? Is it farm raised? And I, are you, should I, every time I go into a restaurant now, should I ask for AQUACO?
Yeah. If it's Florida Pompano, we're the only ones producing it in the U.S. But we don't compete with wild. There's a good local market here in the state, in Texas, Louisiana, you name it, up to the Georgia, Carolinas. But it's very seasonal. The reason we picked Florida Pompano is just such an inconsistent fish. So what we do is we didn't want to ruffle feathers with commercial fish. We say, hey, listen, we're here to compliment you. We're here to be here the other 8 or 9 months. You're not catching wild Florida Pompano. Get you on a menu at a restaurant, and then let the chef make their choice, right? Then it's a matter of, do I want to continue, or do I want to go wild for a few months while it's out there? It's a win-win, right? So as a consumer, you absolutely should. Most who are honest will tell you if it's going to be farmed or wild caught, and then it's up to you to dive down even further. That's great. Is it farmed in Peru? Is it farmed in Fort Pierce, Florida?
Right.
And they should be able to tell you.
Talk about your product, the Florida Pompano. What makes that fish unique, and what makes it the right fish to raise, and what makes it great to eat?
Well, in business, sometimes you have to be lucky and good, right? And so this is one of my first 9 months of having my Excel laptop in front of me of what species, right? I grew up here in Florida, fished pompano along the beach growing up as a kid, and knew the taste was there, the quality was there, the reputation among chefs and restaurants, but doesn't mean there's a market necessarily, wide open for it. So we compared it to grouper, we compared it to flounder, snapper, just some warm water, other marine species, and pompano kept winning the argument points, right? That's a whole other segment, but it's, can they be raised, in a tank with 1,000 other their friends? Do they not mind that schooling? Are they natural schooling fish? Are they a warm watered fish that we're not spending a lot of money or energy or utilities trying to chill that water? All this kind of went into the thought, and at the end of the day, it came out to price point. I spent, again, a lot of those sleepless nights. What's it going to cost me to raise this fish from small leg all the way till I can deliver it to a wholesaler or restaurant? And that answer was harder than you think to come up with. There's so many inputs, right, and variables. But at the end of the day, you have to raise something that has a margin compared to what it costs you, right? Just pretty basic, basic math, and you'd be surprised. A lot of fish just does not have that margin attached to it, just because either A, they're widely available and the price is down. But Pompano won on all those cylinders. But the biggest thing, that's the banker talking. But now the aquaculturists will tell you, it's just an incredible fish to work with. Their survivability, their hardiness in a system like ours is, again, lucky and good. We assumed that, but until we got into it, we didn't know that would necessarily be the case. And they're just proving a great product.
So what's the length of time from the egg to the end product?
About 11 months. Yeah, it's about
Wow.
11. Yeah, just under a year, and we're bringing it down. Our first our first batch, or cohort we call them, was about a year. We learned some things about the fish, their temperature, salinity, and we're down to about 11 months now, and should be around 10 by the time we're starting our expansion, which is really quick. You're talking a salmon is almost 2 years of time. I think the only thing faster might be a tilapia or a freshwater, warm water fish, but it has a pretty good life cycle. To get to a pound and a quarter is about our size we harvest. So these are
that was
kind
my
of
question.
plate-size fish.
Is that's the premium fish? Is a pound and a quarter?
Yeah, and listen, people have asked for larger, and I'll come up with a price one day. But that's the point where they start to sexually mature, and they're putting all their energy towards reproduction versus flesh on the fillet, and so it just doesn't behoove you. That's your kind of time. You got to get them out, and they're ready.
And what are chefs doing with them? Broiling, blackening?
I think now that
frying?
we're with 5 big wholesalers, and they're sending it from Florida to Georgia to Texas, it's all over, and we've done a good job to kind of keep track of where it's going. And I've seen it every single way you just described. Our favorite, we love it grilled, and we love keeping it in the whole. A lot of people, internationally, people love whole fish, head on, gutted, of course, obviously, but it's a beautiful way to eat a fish. It's where you get the most yield. Americans, we're a little bit more stubborn. We don't always want the eyeball kind of looking back at us. But even if you head off, I call it, and still keep it in its true form, it's the best way. So more and more chefs, believe it or not, are keeping it in the whole, and grilling it, pan frying it. It's a scaleless fish, but it's one of the few fish that the skin is absolutely delectable.
Wow. And so, AQUACO's kind of helping to put Fort Pierce on the map. Is this the home of Florida Pompano kind of?
It is for the wild. It's funny, you catch them, like I said, in 5 different states, but Fort Pierce has just always kind of been where the hub is for commercial fishing for Florida Pompano. And that was coincidental by the time we found a home. And listen, if we could return the favor to Fort Pierce, because they did us a lot of favors. St. Lucie County welcomed us in. We were one of their 5 pillars that they made, business pillars here in aquaculture, made our path a little bit easier in getting in our foot in the door and the permits needed. But at the end of the day, we've now have a team of 10. We'll have another 12 people on top of that in expansion. So we're looking to deliver a lot back to it. But yeah, headquarters of AQUACO will always be here in Fort Pierce. We love it.
Nice. Let's turn a little bit to the entrepreneurial side of this. Here you are, a banker, probably had a nice office, making a living. What causes you to jump from the banking industry into something which, again, really not a great track record in this industry?
Yeah.
Passion for it, or just?
It was a lot of humbleness, and it was just I think it could only happen at the age I did it, because you have to do a lot of self-reflection, right? What are your strengths, and what are your weaknesses just as much? And my strengths, in hindsight, looking at my 16-year banking career, were putting good teams together, good leadership, hitting goals, achieving them, but it really was as a leader of people and of teams, right? And so you look at aquaculture, it's no different. We have an all-star team, and I'll brag on them a little bit, but it was handpicked. This person from this university that started their class, it's this person that's been doing it for 10 or 12 years, and this person runs the hatchery, this person, so it's all segmented and siloed, but they're the top crop, and they took a little bit of humbleness to come work at AQUACO, a startup, let alone talk about risk, right? And so it was just a great marriage of teamwork. But to make that gap, let me tell you this. It was 9 months of being okay. I could never answer the question, Joe, are you okay if it fails? Right? It's the number one question probably a lot of entrepreneurs tussle with, especially if you're not starting out at 20, 21, with a company. If you're like me, mid-30s, late 30s doing this, that's a big risk. That W-2, you're right, you hold on to nice and tight. But it took me quite a while to get comfortable with that answer. If this didn't work, I'm okay, because I know it gave it everything I had. And that was a humbling proposition.
And you obviously, I'm sure, as you've mentioned, it helped to come out of banking. You understood finance. You certainly understood how to read a balance sheet. You understood the, how the financial statements work together, and so because you did all that in reviewing others looking to borrow money. But still, what maybe surprised you or was a challenge in starting your own business that you really didn't know?
Oh, geez. There's a long list. I think one of the first ones was the humbleness of going out and having to raise private capital, right? I spent this whole career meeting with companies, begging them to take all that private investment out of their business. Let me put this staunch, banking dollars in front of you with a low interest rate over a long term. Let's get that private debt out of there. Well, here I am now wanting to go out there. And to your point with a lot of clients earlier, we didn't have a balance sheet to stand on, right, or anything. Right. So I had to go out and raise about $4 million in private capital. And the only thing I had going for me was a pretty good business plan, I'll give myself. Still a paper fish on a pretty decent looking pro forma that made sense, and maybe a reputation. I wasn't going to move to the Bahamas with her check, right? I had a pretty good reputation in the industry, but those were the three. And so long story short, I had to go out there and let folks know that not only was a passion there, but this was a good idea. This was going to make money. This was a commercial operation. This wasn't as many good things we do from a sustainability, environmental standpoint. This is a commercial for-profit business. And so I had to go out there and ask. And it was the hardest thing. It took me probably twice as long as I thought it would do. You always want that, big check from someone, but you got to be humble to take a smaller check if that's what they want to do. And we're still on that hunt. We're a little bit better now. We're doing now a $10 million raise to expand and really build a huge improvement on our footprint. And that's not a small number. Luckily now, being a banker, we're going to go out there and get some debt. And I only know enough that what they're going to tell me is going to be truthful or not. That's all. It doesn't mean they're still not going to tell me no or yes. But that's about half of it. And the other half is still equity. So, we're out there looking for good partners who again, it has a lot to do with the team and the product that you have. But we're going to raise about $500,000 here in the next 3 or 4 months just to expand this and build it on. And so that's pretty much my full-time job when I'm not up there getting in the way of raising fish.
Nice. So now where is AQUACO and where are you expanding?
Sure. So we're still on the same site. We were smart enough in the beginning to do all the hard work of expansion at the same time, right? So we got 10 acres up there on the Intercoastal. It's a beautiful site. I've been staring for 2 years at this back 6 acres that I still mow just to keep looking nice. But that's where our 50,000 square foot building expansion is going to go. Nice. And with that, we'll go from producing 50 tons to 500 tons, which is about $1 million, $1.2 million pounds a year. Sounds like a lot. Even that is it's a good start to aquaculture.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and you talked earlier before we went on the air. Now, of course, the biggest part of your product goes into restaurants and wholesale. But you did mention that if someone actually wants a little retail, you've got a little procedure. But would you sell some retail to someone?
we love it because there is no better spokesperson than someone who tries it for the first time or cooks it in their home and puts a good outing on Facebook or Instagram or anything else. And so we do. We have a 5-10 pound minimum just because can't really pack one fish, right? And there's a little bit more expense to it in those small versus doing it wholesale. But I love it. My team will probably listen to this and say, Joe, what are you doing to us here? It's but I tell you, I like it because we get just great feedback from the community. They get to see what we're doing and try it because so much, like I said, goes out of the county, the product wise. We want anybody who wants to come by, we harvest on every Monday morning. So you got to pick up fresh Monday by 4 or 5 o'clock at night. Okay. So it is a little bit limited. It's not all the time around the world because we don't freeze. We just want to keep it whole, harvested that morning just in time. So you won't get anything fresher. All
right. So Mondays is for retail. What's the website?
It's www.aquaco, AQUACO.com.
And phone number if I want to order my 10 pounds for my family fish fry?
I'll maybe potentially regret it, but here's my number. It's 561-866-7092. And you'll reach me, and we'll be able to take care of you.
And real quickly, as we bring this segment of our show to a close here, you were also recognized as a company to watch. Talk a little bit about your award real quick.
Yeah, this is Grow Florida. Grow Florida was new to me getting into this because they are an accelerator for basically second stage companies, right? You have a lot of incubators in the state for startups. Heck, we went through one, like I said, at Florida Atlantic University. But this is at second stage. This is where you've now made momentum. You've built a little bit, but you're not there yet. And so Grow Florida was this accelerator that put tools in front of you. They have, for example, a great mentor program. I have a mentor myself who's based on the West Coast of Florida, but we chat every week for about a half an hour, and you need that. It's a lonely island as an owner or a principal of a startup, a early stage company. It's a lonely island sometimes. So that's just one of the many tools they have. We were nominated, which we're very fortunate. It's anonymous. Of course, we had to do the application, which wasn't as a couple good worthy days of work to fill out. But we're awarded and a finalist now for Grow Florida, which is amazing.
Nice. It is Joe Cardenas with AQUACO right here in Fort Pierce, growing and selling Florida Pompano.
That's right.
Joe, listen, great work. Thank you for all you do. And I'm looking forward to coming up and buying my 10 pounds.
You got it. Absolutely.
Right.
Thanks for having me.
Fish fried. With that, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Small Biz Florida.